Hello, Peterborough. My name is Diane and I'm running to be your next mayor.
I'm Daryl Bennett, Mayor of the City of Peterborough, and I'm looking to extend that into another term as Mayor of the City of Peterborough.
One of these two people will be Peterborough's new mayor on October 22nd. Hello and welcome to the Peterborough This Week mayoral debate. Today we're hosting both mayoral candidates to answer questions asked by you, the residents of Peterborough. Check out their responses and let us know what you think and who you will be voting for on October 22nd.
Hello, Peterborough. My name is Diane and I'm running to be your next mayor. I ask for your vote on October 22nd. I'm happy to be here today to tell you a little bit more about myself and to engage in some debate with Mayor Bennett. I have been hearing at the doors that people are looking for change. I've been talking to citizens and hearing what they're concerned about. As mayor, I will bring in fresh ideas like a Made in Peterborough rideshare solution, lowering speed limits on residential streets. I'm pleased to announce that my policy document will be released tomorrow, so I'm happy to talk about some of those things with you here today. I have 8 themes that are centered around, which are talking about immediate action on transportation and mobility, housing affordability, responsible financial leadership and oversight, safe residential streets, a vibrant and healthy downtown, transparency and public engagement at City Hall, improved parking, and protecting our local environment. These are things that I have championed for my 4 years on council, and those are things that I've been hearing about at the door that citizens are concerned about. So as mayor, I want to have an open and accessible city council. I pledge to be available to you. I have had numerous neighborhood and ward drop-ins over the course of my campaign, as well as during my tenure on city council. My colleague in town ward, Dean Pappas, and I held community barbecues each year to go to where people are and talk to them about what their concerns are. And I will continue to do that if elected as mayor. And so I ask for you to think hard about what you want to see for the future of Peterborough. I want to be your next mayor, and I ask for your vote on October 22nd.
Thank you, and certainly thank you to Peterborough This Week for establishing a debate process for people to get an understanding what their candidates are about. I'm Daryl Bennett, Mayor of the City of Peterborough, and I'm looking to extend that into another term as Mayor of the City of Peterborough. That will be the 3rd term. People have a lot to be happy about in this community and satisfied with in this community. We have developed some policies and programs over the last 8 years that have led to a great deal of momentum and prosperity in this city, this wonderful city of ours. I've said a number of times in the past that we stand on the shoulders of those who come before us, but we also stand shoulder to shoulder to ensure that we continue to build on things that are important to us. People talk about jobs and talk about how they're going to go about creating jobs. We have created jobs. We have created the atmosphere for jobs to be created in this community, and we will continue to do that. I too have been to doors in the city of Peterborough, and I'm hearing that people are pretty content with the level of activity on behalf of the city, on behalf of city council, and certainly on behalf of the way that the city has been managed over the last period of time. We have a number of projects that we have done in the last few years that have led to some benefits for people. A number of hundreds of units of affordable housing have been added to the mix in the last 8 years. We continue with that process going forward. We're also looking at new subdivision activities in the community that helps to relieve some of the pressures on housing, which was one of the issues that I heard at the door as well. I think that we've established a good base for continuing progress in this city. When I first ran for election in 2010, I landed on the premise of leadership that works, moving in 2014 to progress with purpose, and then moving in 2018 to momentum. I think as people look around, they drive on some of the streets that we've worked on, Braley Drive, Lansdowne Street to Ashburnham Drive, and a number of the other activities we've got on that have been sound investments on behalf of this community. They'll find that we are in very good shape compared to most other communities in this end of the country, and certainly we look forward to continuing with that over the next 4 years. So I thank you for this opportunity to be here today. I thank you for the questions that you're going to bring up, and we'll try to be worthy of the answers to them. Thank you. Well, thank you for that, and certainly we have been working diligently with Peterborough Housing Corporation to assist with affordable housing in this community, along with that with the developers who come into the city who look for innovative programs and innovative ways of assisting this community with its housing shortage. We have a 1% vacancy rate in this city, and that's something that some communities would think is wonderful, some in the community think is wonderful if you happen to be renting houses. But at the end of the day, we need more housing stock. I have worked diligently over the last 8 years to approve new subdivision activities, new building activities that have been proposed for the community. All of that leads to a benefit to the overall cost of operating a household in the city and overall cost of what it takes to get involved in the housing business in this city. So going forward, we will continue to look at each and every development application that comes forward. The places to grow from the province gives us a mandate to intensify, and certainly we are well prepared to do that. We have a number of projects that have been brought forward to council. One of them unfortunately was not successful, but there will be others that we will deal with in a positive fashion. Our official plan will be done by the first or second quarter of 2019, and that'll lay a basis for what the intensification of the city is going to look like in the next number of years. So it's all work in progress. It continues to be work in progress, and it continues to be very positive for the city.
Yeah, and housing is something that I hear about every night when I'm out knocking on doors. It's something that it affects all neighborhoods and everyone in our community, really. So in my policy document, I talk about housing affordability and encouraging more housing by reducing some of the red tape, eliminating minimum parking requirements, appointing a designated point of contact representative at City Hall who can help developers get a better service and results through the planning and permitting process. We want to update our zoning and planning to show that we are growth ready. We also need to make sure that we're supporting our housing and homelessness plan. And every year at council, at budget committee, I've advocated for more funding into our rent stability fund and into the housing stability fund and our rent supplement program. It's cheaper to keep people housed than it is to try to support them through the shelter system. And so we need to be looking at, our vulnerable residents and how we keep them housed. And in the market that we have with such a low vacancy rate and a hot real estate market where people are getting, the landlords are selling off the house and then people have nowhere to go because it's going to cost them $1,300 a month to rent a one-bedroom apartment. We have a lot of working poor in our community, and we need to make sure that we're working to keep people housed in a good way. So we want to keep working on all of those things, continuing to provide financial incentives to private developers who want to construct rental housing that have affordable rents. And so those are some of the things that I would commit to doing to help alleviate the housing crisis.
Sure, there's a couple of points. Number one, the changes that we made at City Hall will help to streamline. That was done this term of council, actually, and it's something that I was very pleased to champion on behalf of the community. We have to be very cautious as we balance out the cause and effect of every move we make at council. When we propose changes to the structure and changes to how we assist those most in need in the community, that puts a pressure on the taxpayer base. We're dealing with property taxes in this community that are, as some might say, too high to begin with, but we also have to be careful we don't put additional pressures on it. So when it comes to redistribution of wealth, the province and the federal government are best set to deal with that. We have to watch how we spend our taxpayers' dollars very carefully.
Yeah, so this is an issue that's close to me. I worked for several years with the Peterborough Poverty Reduction Network, and I continue to work and volunteer with organizations that help our most vulnerable people. Certainly, we know that there are interrelated causes that lead people to be living in poverty. The cost of living and the cost of everything goes up. Wages aren't going up, so we have an increasing amount of people, aside from people that are on Ontario Works or on ODSP, who are working multiple jobs, multiple shifts to try to make ends meet. That's the reality, part of the reality of the new economy that we lived in. And I know that, and other people that have grown up in that, they talk about the millennial hustle of having to try to work several jobs to make ends meet. So we have in my policy talking about those things around housing affordability, continuing with the One City project, funding that over 4 years that they've launched in the downtown to help reduce stigma around homelessness and marginalization, building better relationships with our police service to ensure that people can get the help that they need and that they and that they're able to feed in to us what the issues are that they're seeing. I went on a ride along with the police a couple months ago, and every call had to do with mental health, poverty, and addictions. And so we need to work more closely with them, social service workers, frontline providers, to try to alleviate some of those pressures. We should have a poverty reduction network. There was one that has lapsed, as they do in Hamilton and in other cities, to ensure that marginalized people are able to put forward the ideas, like they know what's going to help them. And so we need to listen to that, and we need to incorporate those ideas.
Great question. It's one that we grapple with every day of our lives when you're in the public sector. We have, and stated it many, many times, the cities in this country become the repositories of the failed upper level governments when it comes to judicial, healthcare, and education. Those people who fall through the cracks end up on our city streets. We look to our provincial people to assist us with social programs that we can deliver in a very effective way. I believe we've done a very good job of that. I think that we continue to lobby. I've met with our new MPP, as I did with our former MPP, on many an occasion, to look for more revenues that we can assist the most needy people in the community. We have many, many programs in this city that are not available in other cities. There was a cutback, as you'll recall, with the provincial government back a number of years ago, where they cut back on some of the discretionary benefits that were being provided. We stepped up and filled that bill from this city standpoint, and we continue to maintain that level of service. It is a cost to the taxpayer, but I believe it's a good investment on behalf of the taxpayer to help those most in need in our city. Housing on the same side, we've built a number of units through our Peterborough Housing Corporation. We continue to look at that as a strength of this community over many others, and we continue to look for ways to improve housing for those who are most affected. The new build at the Brock Mission is going to give a number of units within this community that will allow for some people who would never be away from the lack of housing. That will give them an opportunity to build themselves into a life that is a good starting point to start moving forward.
So I think that while we do need senior levels of government to step up and put money in, they've talked about mental health, they've talked about national housing strategy, they haven't been flowing those funds down to us yet. But we can't continue to offload responsibility because these are people in our community that we still need to look after. And we need to have more empathy and understanding for the situations that they're in. We need to make sure that they have access to the services that are available to them, to the Nourish program, the food box program. There are a lot of great nonprofits and charitable organizations doing good work in our community that can help bridge some of those gaps in the interim. But also it's a matter of what we think are our investment priorities. I think that investing in our people is a very important thing to do. And so we need to make sure that people can stay housed, that help them make sure that that kids aren't going to school hungry. 1 in 5 kids in our community is going to school hungry. That's unacceptable. So we need to be taking concrete steps and working across sectors and building those partnerships to try to alleviate that situation.
Thank you. That's a question that is asked by not just at the doors, but on a week-by-week basis in my office at City Hall. We see it. We all see it in the community where panhandling has become a way of life for a number of people. The Safe Streets Act was brought in by the provincial government a number of years ago to allow people to enter into a way of appropriately requesting funds from other people, and that is something that continues to this day. That is a very unfortunate thing for people to put themselves through, and when I say that, that's the person asking for the funds, because a lot of them are pretty able-bodied people who want to work. They do not have the skills to match up with the jobs that are out there. What are we doing about it? We've actually looked at it from a number of angles. We've asked our healthcare providers, we've asked our employment standards people, we've asked our police to look at some of them to see what we can do, because there's some safety issues that arise from that as well. We are diligent in trying to find better situations for those people so they do not find themselves on the streets begging for money, is what it comes down to. So what will we do going forward? We will continue to pressure all the appropriate authorities to try to bring assistance to the folks who are most in need, and we will assist with policing activities when needed if there are safety issues that arise from the panhandling that goes on.
Yeah, and again, this is something that I hear about a lot as the representative of the downtown and somebody who lives and works there. I mean, the image of the downtown is, depending on who you ask, a lot of it's related to poverty, and we have a high concentration of visible poverty in our downtown. Part of it is because we are a social service hub for outlying areas in the county where you can't access the services that people need, so they're coming to Peterborough for that. So really what we need to do is make sure that people are being connected to the services that they need. And the One City program is doing a good job of that, of, treating people with respect. Like, these are people. And so having empathy and understanding for the circumstances that lead them to be panhandling, to be on the streets, nobody chooses to do that. We need to figure out how to work with our frontline service providers, with our police, with the different organizations that are doing great work around this to help people get to the services that they need, the mental health counseling, employment supports, housing supports, all of those things. They're there. Some people sometimes just don't know where to go to find that. And so that's part of it. And I think just understanding that downtown is just as safe as anywhere else in the community. There is a perception that it is unsafe, but it's not. You can look at the statistics. Crime there is not any higher than it is in any other area in the city.
Thank you. And most, as has been noted, most of the indications are by way of perception. The downtown of our city is far more vibrant and far more enjoyable than many of the downtowns I've been in. I've traveled through most of Ontario, if not most of Canada, over the years. I think that the perception side of it is what we are dealing with in many ways, and that is something that helps with the need for more housing downtown, more people downtown, more business opportunities for people to work in the downtown, to live and to be involved with the downtown. That goes a long ways to assisting with a lot of the problems that have just been described about the image of the downtown.
Yeah, the opioid crisis is something that is ravaging communities all across Ontario, Canada, North America. And we're struggling to figure out how to catch up to how far it's gotten and to figure out how to appropriately deal with it. In the downtown in particular, the One City project, as I've mentioned, is working to try to clean that up. It'd be great to sort of branch that out to other areas of the city because I'm hearing about it in all different wards. We also need to ensure that people are able to access, again, like I said, treatment centers to deal with these addictions, because it's not always the people that you think. Opioid addiction is something that transcends income levels and brackets, and everybody that we know probably knows somebody who's dealing with this kind of problem. So yeah, for sure, we need to have a strategy to make sure that our parks and public areas are cleaned up of needles. We don't know what's going to happen with, having safe injection sites. That's sort of, on the wayside now. But we need to make sure people have access to services so that we can stop preventing what are preventable deaths.
We continue to work diligently with our partners to try our best to control the discarded needles that are left, not just in the downtown, but all over the community. We have a policy in place with our public works people. If we find a site where a needle is found, then they automatically put that onto our patrols, and we go around and check those sites on a regular basis. So yes, they find new ones here, there, and all over, because people are not creatures of habit in that regard necessarily, but at least we're trying to get on top of it as best we can. It's a big problem. And as been noted, it's a big problem right across North America, and it's one that is going to take a concentrated effort by all levels of government. Healthcare especially needs to become more involved in the actual crisis that's in front of it to see if we can't get some sort of handle on what we can do to assist these people. We will do everything we can to prevent any unnecessary deaths in this community, and I hope that every other community takes that same position. Are safe injection sites the answer to it? Perhaps that's a part that might assist, but there may be other things that can be done as well, and certainly we're open to entertain any ideas in that regard.
Sure. It has become, more also than a healthcare issue, but we certainly do need to be lobbying senior levels of government to help us fund Ideally, what we would have instead of having methadone clinics is a comprehensive detox center where people can go and get the complete wraparound services that they need when they're dealing with addictions and mental health, because so often those things are intertwined. And you can't, methadone is a Band-Aid solution that isn't actually getting at the heart of why people are on drugs, and it's not helping them find again housing, employment, counseling, supports, all of those things that are needed. And there's examples in other jurisdictions across Canada where those comprehensive centers have been implemented, and they have been successful in helping to reduce the addictions and particularly the rates of death that we are seeing, unprecedented levels of death with regards to opioids.
We have a transportation master plan that was put in place a number of years ago now that we are diligently working with and towards. It's a very comprehensive plan. All new streets are cycle-friendly and walker-friendly, all new subdivisions of sidewalks on both sides of them, plus walking paths to enable people to make them more complete communities. We've added a lot of additional bike paths to the community in an effort to try to attach one end of the community to the other. It's very difficult in a community of this nature unless you're doing new road construction because of the nature of some of the streets that we have. The plan itself is sound. The plan itself is one that we will work towards. We have some challenges. We have been chastised because we don't move quick enough on this and many other topics, quite frankly, but it's all a budgetary consideration, and that's something that we all take a very cautious approach to when we're spending taxpayers' dollars. So at the end of the day, the plan is in place. I believe it's very functional. I believe it's very workable going forward, and I believe it's something we can complete in a orderly fashion over a number of years. So from a timing standpoint, nobody would be able to put their finger on to say, I will do this by this date, because it's not practical to do that because of all the other pressures that come on to transportation networking in this country. We have one great problem that a lot of other jurisdictions don't, and that's called weather. And it's something that still needs to be factored in as you move forward with any of the decisions relating to transportation.
Sure, and as you know, I'm always advocating for all types of transportation. In my policy, I'll talk about immediate action on transportation and mobility, which includes fixing the roads that we already have, starting immediately with Chemong and Charlotte Streets, fixing problematic intersections to improve traffic flow and enhance public safety. We hear a lot about certain intersections where they're adjacent to schools, they're close to seniors' homes, where people do not feel safe crossing. Implementing smart traffic light systems to help improve our traffic flow. Encouraging a rideshare program like Uber, Lyft, or a Made It for Peterborough solution, as well as bike shares to give residents more options for more convenient and affordable travel. And expanding, connecting, and enhancing trails and bike lanes to improve citywide walkability and accessibility. We also want to talk about safer residential streets, so reducing the speed limit from 50 to 40 kilometers an hour on residential streets and 30 kilometers an hour in safety zones. Implement traffic calming to help reduce cut-through traffic, turning restrictions, and smart traffic light system. And increasing visible markers and calming measures in school safety zones, and looking at perhaps adding family safety zones and senior safety zones. We want everybody to be able to get around our city in a more convenient, efficient, affordable, and accessible way. And if you build it so that it's accessible for seniors and people with disabilities, it's going to be accessible for everyone. It's going to be accessible for small children, the whole range of people that we have in our city. So we need to be thinking long-term about how people are going to move, not just how we move now, but what the projections are for how people are going to move in the future, and the trends towards families wanting to have maybe be a one-car family, particularly people that might want to live downtown. So we need to be planning for the long term for what we want our transportation and our transit system to look like, and we need to get moving on it now because we are behind where we need to be.
And certainly the transportation plan that we have in place speaks directly to the future and speaks directly to the present needs as it relates to vehicular and pedestrian and cyclists in this community. The two streets that were mentioned, Charlotte Street and Chemong Road, they're already in the design phase to complete rebuilding of them. Charlotte Street runs from Park Street right through to Water with a major upgrade to it, which has been long overdue. Along with that is the new park on Charlotte Street, which is going to add some additional capacity to the downtown, again to attract more people to live in that area. We can all speak to the need for road repairs and road replacements, but the bottom line to all of that is it's subject to budget, and the taxpayer has a certain limit when it comes to that.
Well, it already does impact my decision making at City Hall. Like I said, I plan for the long term, plan for 2100. The baby born today is going to live to see, ideally would live to see the year 2100, and that's not that far off. It's 82 years. So it sounds like it's really far away, but it's not. And so we need to be planning carefully around how decisions impact not just economically, but environmentally and socially, and all the impacts. You need to have a holistic view at how you're going to make decisions that are going to impact our city, because having a healthy environment is a key part of our community. It's part of why people are moving here from other places. I've talked to a lot of young families at the door who came to Peterborough because of its proximity to lakes, because of the great amount of green space that we have, because their kids are able to walk to school on trails and through parks and all of these things. So climate change is something that we need to be seriously considering. We're seeing, the impacts of it this summer, where it's been not fun knocking on doors when it's been 40 degrees, and so there's a lot of everything that we do relates into that, and so protecting our local environment is something that's very important to me. I want to, if elected, establish an environmental advisory committee so that we can get input from local residents who know a lot about these things. There's such expertise in this community that we need to be pulling from. We want to broaden and streamline the flood reduction subsidy program so that we can reach more residents and businesses. Initiate an urban greenbelt program to enhance neighborhood trail connections, and establish a green bin program to help divert 20% of household waste. We had that program. Some of the provincial funding was pulled, but we need to find the money from somewhere else. It's a matter of priorities, and the amount of food waste that happens in this community is, we need to divert that from our landfills.
Every decision that we've made for the last number of years, you will recall some 20 years ago there was talk that the Northwest Passage was going to open up sometime in the future, and people shrugged their shoulders and thought, well, wouldn't that be interesting? We won't be alive to see it, but here it is 20 years later and it's already happened. So climate change is real, there's no argument about that, and I think that we need to embrace any and all technologies that are going to assist us in the decision-making process as it relates to matters that we used to take for granted. Not the least of which is the amount of water that we have in this area. That's a commodity that wars will be fought over in the next number of years, in my estimation, that we too need to be very, very careful on how we make use of our very, very special water-based technologies that we have here. That's something that Trent University has done a great job with. The Innovation Cluster itself has been working, and the Clean Tech Commons out at Trent will go a long ways to assist with that. I think that we understand the concept of it. I think that we have the people in place to assist with it, and I think that we have the technology available to us to assist us with decisions that are going to be very impactful over the next 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years out. Each decision that we get involved in, you always look at that through a lens of environmental impact and environmental understanding, and certainly climate change plays its role in that and will play a bigger role going forward. Is it unusual to have the weather we're having? I recall it as a youngster having summers like this before. I recall having winters that were open before, so there's changes that occur naturally, but this one is for real. I think we're going to be favored with climate variations that we've never experienced before, and we need to be ready for it.
Sure. I think that, what I've been hearing at the door and what I've argued for over my 4 years on council is the absolute need to have more careful planning around the large decisions that we're making. And so, the reasons that I voted against site plan approval for the casino and voted against the proposed twin pad at Trent, not because I'm opposed to those things in principle, but because building on wetlands is not the way to move forward as a community. if you've been to those spaces to see what they look like now or before, the amount of vegetation and wildlife that are in there, once you displace that, it's gone, and you're not going to get it back. And so we need to be working really hard to protect our natural environment and not take advantage of it. Not say, oh well, trees will go back, you can do this. Like, we need to keep the canopy of greenery that we have and develop in a smart way, and do it in places that are not on wetlands. Like, it just doesn't make scientific sense, it doesn't make economic sense, and it doesn't make environmental sense.
Commercial and industrial land in the city of Peterborough is still available in small pockets, and will continue to be available to us for the foreseeable future, in my estimation. We have already been in discussions with our adjoining townships to look for ways to work in partnership to ensure that we'll have a lasting supply out over the next number of years. That's something that was received very favorably by Cavan Monaghan, and yes, Cavan Monaghan has sat down and chatted with us with regards to what we can do in partnership to assist with the growth of this region, which will assist all of us. Jobs flow from that. Wealth and investment flows from that as it relates to the creation of jobs and the creation of new industry that will be attracted to this region. We are well positioned because of the airport, because of other investments that we've made over the years to attract new businesses, and they will be looking at this community very, very favorable over the short term and over the long term. So how will we address it? We are addressing it. We're looking at new lands that will be available to assist with new businesses that want to locate in this area, and we have a number of irons in the fire to work towards that with.
Sure, and I think it's also, when we're talking about economic development, you know, in addition to industrial land, we need to be looking at the kind of spaces that the new economy needs, which is often less of those large-scale industrial complexes. And so 90% of job growth that's happening in Peterborough is happening in small and medium-sized businesses. And we need to look at ways of doing adaptive reuse and creative ways of using up spaces that are on the city's footprint already to be able to provide space for these people, to provide space for these businesses to grow and flourish. You know, that's where most of the job growth is coming from. So we need to recognize that. The projections that the city was using around to rationalize the annexation were based solely on past trends. And when those discussions were going on, I asked, well, where is the forecasting happening? Where is the study around what job growth is going to look like 20, 40 years from now? Because it's going to look very different than it did 20, 40 years ago. And so building for that type of industry isn't as relevant as it was. So again, we need to work with industry that we have here. Certainly we need to work with townships around us to try to find some more land, but we also need to be looking at how we support these small and medium-sized businesses that don't necessarily need acres and acres of land. And we need to look at adaptive and creative reuse, I think, is the biggest thing that we need to be doing, and other jurisdictions are doing it and have had great success in it, in bringing people to downtown areas and other areas that have underused space that can be converted into really cool workstations and can have 100 people working in a building like they do at the Centre for Social Innovation in Toronto that are all working for different companies or different organizations, but they share that space because you go further together than you do when you go alone.
And for sure, Peterborough is not Toronto, so we have different scope of things that are available to us in this community as opposed to some of the larger, more populated centers. In case anybody has missed it, all of the old factories that were vacant 8 years ago when we moved into the political arena are now all full and all very productive in job creation for this city. We have one more big one that's coming up, and that's GE, and we've had some preliminary discussions with them. They are not in your normal capacity looking to sell their property. They have a long-term strategy towards that, but I believe we can work with them to come up with a very workable solution for that 80 acres of land that's within our city. I think there's great opportunities available to us. I believe we do need to engage the outside townships. We do need to engage in partnerships to make sure that we get the best value for our customers, the taxpayer.
Yeah, cannabis is coming on October 17th. People will be able to order it online. And so I think, I would like to have some consultation with the community before we decide whether or not to opt out. I don't want to turn down economic opportunities. That's a booming industry. And we need to be careful about it, though, because there are public health risks and other risks that are going to go along with this. I know that the police and other organizations feel that this has kind of been rushed in too quickly without adequate consultation, without adequate preparedness on behalf of some of those community services and organizations. So I think the key piece there is to have a robust consultation process with those stakeholders as well as the broader community to see what they want to do around this. So I wouldn't presume to answer for them, but I wouldn't put the possibility of opting out on the table yet. I'd want to talk more and learn more from our public health, from our police services, who I know are not in favor of it. But the reality is that people are going to be able to order it online starting in October, and so we need to be able to respond to the possible public health risks and all of those things, whether or not we end up having an actual store in our community.
We've already engaged meetings with police and health services and the MPP to discuss this very matter, and it's something that I take very seriously. Mr. Trudeau, in his wisdom, did manage to keep one of his election promises, and that was legalizing marijuana or cannabis in this country. We are very deficient in the information that we need to make a informed decision to give us the proper outcome about what we will do about it, but I can tell you right now we are in a deficit position when it comes to what it's going to cost this community. Police guesstimate about $500,000. When you look at the money that the federal government to the province, to the municipalities, we might be lucky to recover $10,000 of that through the funding that they initially said would be available. Having it sold online is one part of it. There's also the grow-up opportunities for people in their homes. That has not been well enough defined to even give us a glance as to how it's going to occur. I think it's 4 plants per person, but it doesn't say whether if there's 16 people living in an apartment building, does that mean 4 times 16, or does that mean only one person in the building can grow 64 plants? So it's really a travesty when you look at how this has been introduced, the speed at which it has occurred, and the number of pitfalls that have been set up for the people who are left to deal with it. There's not the proper equipment available to the police department to begin to come up with regulatory opportunities to assist with impairment because of it, and there's many other factors that need to be considered. So until we've had ample opportunity, which I believe some of that will occur between now and April when it stops being sold online and goes to a storefront, or when the opportunity becomes available to go to a storefront, perhaps by then we'll have enough information to make a decision.
I mean, I don't have a lot of a rebuttal. I think that we agree. We
both
agree
said
on
the
the
same
same
thing.
thing. Yeah, we just need more time, and we need to have make sure that we know what we're doing, because right now there's just too many unanswered questions, too many pieces missing from the puzzle to make sure that we can do it in a safe way. And so, more consultation and figuring it out before we can commit to anything. That's what we need to do.
Well, what a great question on the sale of PDI, and every decision that we make for the city of Peterborough that I am involved in is always done with the best interest of the community's long-term benefits at hand. There was a great amount of information that came forward to us on PDI to allow us to make the appropriate decision. Mine was in favor of the sale, and it still is in favor of the sale. If PDI continued to operate with the same infrastructure that we had before, our rates would have gone up 28.8% over the next decade. The deal we put together with Hydro One, their rates are projected to increase about 6.5% on that same time frame. And let's be very clear for everybody, we're not talking about the price of electricity, we're talking about the poles and wires that deliver that electricity within the community. The poles and wire side of that business have changed enormously over the years, and they are in a state of flux even as we speak. Part of the reason for selling it is because of the size of the distribution network that we had here, which was just going to be further diminished with the loss of GE's load on the use of hydro in the city. So all of that factors into the cost factor that goes back to the ratepayer. We are looking to enhance the opportunity for investment in the community with the reinvestment of the monies. The profits that come from the sale of the poles and wires will flow back to the city. We can reinvest that money to pick up upwards of 3 to 4 times more income than what we were getting out of the actual use of the wires. Will Hydro One do a better job or as good a job of managing the system as we did? Yes, they will. Hydro One, for those who may not know, now operates all the territory that we've just approved for the new subdivisions are all within Hydro One territory. And the people who are now dealing with Hydro One within the city of Peterborough find their rates to be very comparable to ours. So the service levels will be as good. The profit factor is spectacular for the city.
Well, I'm a firm believer that public utilities need to stay in public hands. And so when those conversations were going on, I had asked about other options. There was another company that was interested in doing more of a merger that was more of a locally controlled company, Viridian, that were willing to talk to us. They've been doing mergers down in the Whitby area and Ajax and all of that. And they were very interested in working with us. And when I brought that forward, it was just shut down, and Hydro One was presented as the only option, the only saving grace for that. I listened to the concerns of the community around the long-term viability of this deal. It seems like a lot of money up front, and that, that's great, but the ultimate thing is that part of the problem is that we hadn't been properly investing in those poles and wires over the last several decades as we should have been, which we could have done to make sure that our local utility remained local. And there are jurisdictions around North America who have sold off their utilities that are scrambling to try to get them back. There are jurisdictions around the world that are putting money into their local utilities to ensure that they remain viable and that they're able to still provide the public service that they're meant to provide in that way. And so I listened to the information that came from the consultants. I listened to the concerns of the residents in the community, and like I said, fundamentally, I believe that public utilities need to stay in public hands. And so the case for it was, to me, not strong enough, and we're going to have to just see what happens in the long term with this deal, and once it goes through the OEB, and we'll just see and hope that there's better service, because from what I've heard from Hydro One customers, they are not happy. So it's going to be an interesting time.
Bottom line to it is, if you took time to read all the reports that were available to us, you would come up with a very logical decision that the sale of the poles and wires division of our hydro operation was very much in vogue with what's going on in the industry. North America-wise, over in Europe and every other jurisdiction, they're all changing their delivery services of hydro. It is not just about the money, it's about the new jobs that are going to be created for this community. There's a new regional hub that's going to be built, which is plus or minus 50 new jobs in the community, which are high-paying jobs, which are going to sustain more work in the community and more business within the community as far as the operations go. You would be somewhat naive if you didn't understand the changes that have occurred and will continue to occur with hydro delivery, and that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about the poles and wires themselves, we're talking about the use of those to deliver the service.
Yeah, well, we need to get on with fixing the roads. I know that there's plans, as we've heard, for some of the roads that have been decades in talking about it and in planning, and ultimately we just need to push forward with some of these big projects. I know that it costs a lot of money, but we can't afford not to do it. And when we are building these roads, we need to do them again with long-term planning in mind. So when we're redoing Charlotte Street, I know that this past term on council, I lost the vote about getting bike lanes on Charlotte Street. I'm hoping that will change in the next term of council, because when you're building these things, you need to have complete streets, and when you're putting in cycling lanes, they need to be on streets where destinations are. There's not destinations on King Street, so it doesn't make sense to put them there. People are still going to use Charlotte Street. So the roads all over need to be invested in. It's a matter of prioritization. It is expensive, but we need to take action on it immediately. We need to make sure that we're getting cut-through traffic off of residential streets, which I'm proposing to do using turning restrictions and other mechanisms that we have available to us. Reducing speed limits will help with some of that as well. And so, the big roads are those big ticket items, and they sound really daunting, the amount of money that we need to put into it. But it just gets more expensive the longer that you put it off, and you have damage to our buses and our cars and all these other, all those other things. So we need to be making sure that we are fixing our roads, making them accessible for all road users. And also, while we're doing that, making sure that they're accessible for pedestrians, people that are in mobility devices, families with strollers, all of those things. We need wider sidewalks, and we need all of it. We need to be thinking long term about what the best use of our money is, and it is into fixing some of these roads that are just in terrible, terrible condition.
Well, some of Peterborough roads are in terrible shape, and some of them are in excellent shape. But the bottom line to it is that it's the taxpayer dollars that go to fix towards fixing roads in the community. So the sale of PDI, the advent of the casino coming into the city, gives us some new capital dollars that we did not have before. We will not need to look to the taxpayer in such a way as we have before with the use of these funds to use on capital projects. So that was one of the main reasons for the sale of both of those, the sale of PDI and also the advent of the casino coming into the city. We have budgetary considerations that, yes, it would be nice to wave a wand and fix every street all at the same time in the city of Peterborough. Functionally, that is not possible because of the cost of doing that. The money that's coming in from the sale of PDI and the casino revenues will go a long, long ways to offset that 1% factor that we've added on to taxes for the last 8 years to ensure that we can make a dent in some of these projects. It is necessary to try to reduce the burden on our taxpayers in any way that we can. I can tell you from my preliminary review of what's going on with our provincial masters now, the cupboard is going to come up very bare when they finish their audit. There's not going to be the programs that have been available in the past to assist us with capital projects, and communities had better be in good shape going forward with their own abilities to finance their own projects, or they're going to find themselves relying on the taxpayers in such a way that it's going to become very burdensome. So we can fix them, and we can fix them as best as any other community in this country with the advent of the new monies that are going to flow in from, again, the sale of PDI and the casino revenue that's going to flow to this community will go a long, long ways to assisting with that.
Yeah, I mean, the money that's coming in from those two sources certainly will be helpful towards some of these capital projects, but particularly with the casino, we've heard about the issues that we're going to have to deal with around gambling, around addictions, around those sort of social ills that align with having a casino in our town. When we're talking about the provincial government, they're cutting money for capital projects. They're also slashing and burning social programs and money for people on OW and ODSP. So we're going to have to use some of those monies too, not only on capital projects, but into the budgets to make sure that we're able to maintain our social services and able to help our most vulnerable people, because we can't count on the provincial government to do that. So we need to make sure that we're prioritizing our people as well as our roads and allocating that money in ways that is helping people in the best way possible.
Thanks to Peterborough This Week, and certainly to Taylor and to Lance for assisting us in being able to come together to speak today. We've touched on a number of important issues. We've touched on a lot of the items that we are hearing at the doors in the city of Peterborough, and I would hope that we have a better understanding of where we stand on what we need to do going forward as a community. We have common interests on many, many fronts that certainly are going to take some careful consideration going forward, and people have a very clear choice in the next election. Who has the best skills and best experiences to manage the political arm of what goes on in this community? That's the decision that needs to be made. We've done what we needed to do to build some progress, to pick up some momentum in the city over these last 8 years. We have many, many projects that we can point to that certainly speak directly to that. The work that we did on Ashburnham, the work that we did on Brayley, the work that we did on Lansdowne Street, the investment that we put into the airport, They fully paid and funded stormwater relief that's going to occur on Bethune Street is one that is probably the biggest project of that nature that we've ever taken on in this community. And it's one that we can take great pride in going forward if this climate change, which is real, comes forward with it or rears its ugly head again. We are going to be prepared to deal with the outcome of that going forward with some of the projects that we put in place. I started off the campaign when I said that I'm not running against anyone or anything, and I meant that very sincerely. I'm running for the city of Peterborough, for the people of this community, for their best interests on every decision that we make. Taxes are something that we all feel and that we all need to be wary of when we try to overinvest in various areas within the community. We need to extend the balances that we've maintained, and we need to move forward on that same basis over the next 4 years. So October 22nd is vote date. We'll look forward to the results.
Well, I would hope that everybody running in this election is running for Peterborough. Certainly, that's what I'm doing. And while Daryl might not be running against anyone, I am running against him, and I'm asking for your vote on October 22nd. I know, as we've heard, voters have a clear choice to make about what they want for the future of this city. I am the person that can bring forward fresh ideas, a collaborative approach, working to rebuild the relationships that we need in our community with our police, with our GBIA, with various other groups that we need to work with. City Hall is not just a one-person show. It's a collaborative thing. It belongs to all of us, and we all need to benefit from it. That's why when my policy promises are released tomorrow, you'll see that I'm talking about responsible financial leadership and oversight, transparency and public engagement at City Hall, housing affordability, immediate action on transportation and mobility, safe residential streets, a vibrant and healthy downtown, improved parking, and protecting our local environments. I want to bring new ideas forward as well as continue the ones that I've been fighting for my 4 years on council. Better consultation with our community, more careful planning, being engaged and available to the citizens, because we work for you, and that is what I commit to do on an ongoing basis. And so if you want to find out more, look to my website tomorrow, come talk to me. I'll be knocking on your door hopefully sometime soon. And October 22nd, I ask for your vote as the next mayor of Peterborough. Thank you.